Hey everyone, number 72 on my list of 100 greatest songs of all time is Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits. I think Mark Knopfler, his songwriting ability gets overlooked a little bit by his guitar playing because he is an exceptional guitar player. And I always, when I watch him on live performances and stuff, I always find it interesting that he's not using a pick, he's just using his thumb and his index and middle finger. And I always find it fascinating, but it does mean that he plays differently than most of the guitar players because he doesn't have, I suppose, not so much the limitations of the pick, but he can allow himself to play a couple of strings at the same time by using his thumb and his fingers, so the picking technique. And I talked about Dire Straits as a band that I heard when my mom would have introduced us to Dire Straits. Brothers in Arms was one of the biggest selling albums of all time. And if you look at the front cover, there's a guitar on that. It's the steel guitar. He actually uses that guitar on Romeo and Juliet, and to amazing effect. And there's beautiful piano playing in it, and everything's subtle and kind of downplayed, but everything adds to how brilliant of a song this is. It's said to be about a man who is in love with a woman, Juliet, but she has become famous and gone off with someone else, and it's about his yearning for what they used to have and if they can get it back. And there's lovely little bits about Romeo and Juliet, like the Shakespeare play added into it, and I think the lyrics are so good in it. If you were thought I was going to be sitting here with a guitar, by the way, playing this song, you can forget about it. I'm making a fool of myself trying to play a Mark Knopfler riff, but I will read some of the lyrics because I do think they're absolutely brilliant. So it's a story from start to finish. Love-struck Romeo sang the streets a serenade, laying everybody low with a love song that he made. Finds a street light, steps out of the shade, says something like, "You and me, babe, how about it?" Which is interesting as well about Dire Straits, is that you can get away without having an amazing voice, like, because Mark Knopfler clearly doesn't, but he's able to use it brilliantly. Juliet says, "Hey, it's Romeo, you nearly gave me a heart attack." He's underneath the window, she's singing, "Hey la, my boyfriend's back. You shouldn't come around here singing up at people like that. Anyway, what you gonna do about it?" Which is great because it's the idea of the balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet. Juliet, the dice was loaded from the start, and I bet, and you exploded into my heart, and I forget the movie song. When you gonna realize it was just that the time is wrong, Juliet. Come up on different streets, they both were streets of shame. Both dirty, both mean, yes, and the dream is just the same. And I dreamed you dreamed for you, and now your dream is real. How can you look at me as if I was just another one of your deals? That's like great songwriting. That's like, I don't really want to read all the lyrics, but I kind of do now. When you can fall for chains of silver, you can fall for chains of gold. You can fall for pretty strangers and the promises they hold. You promised me everything, you promised me thick and thin. Yeah, now you just say, "Oh, Romeo, yeah. You know I used to have a scene with him," meaning they used to go out with each other. I can't do the talk like the talk on the TV, and I can't do a love song like the way it's meant to be. I can't do everything, but I'll do everything for you. I can't do anything except be in love with you. And all I do is miss you and the way we used to be, and all I do is keep the beat, the bad company. All I do is kiss you to the bars of a rhyme. Julie, I'll do the stars with you anytime. And then the last verse then is, Juliet, when we made love, you used to cry. You said, "I love you like the stars above. I love you till I die. There's a place for us, you know the movie song. When you're going to realize it was just that time was wrong." And like, if you listen to the song, the way those lines roll into each other is so good. We watched the video the other day, and like it's a bizarre kind of arty piece with kind of when people are acting on the stage and they have to use bigger facial expressions to project their emotions to the far end of the theater or whatever. And the actors in the video kind of do that, which is great because like that's the whole point of the Romeo and Juliet play in line with the modern idea of Romeo and Juliet, and the costumes and everything. It's very, because it came out in 1980, and it is very 80s, almost pre what you have an idea of what the 80s would turn out to be, if that makes sense. But it is quite an art piece, and it kind of suits the song. But if you look up the live stuff, and again, I talked about like the idea of a guitar player slash singer being able to play certain parts whilst singing. It's a very difficult thing to do if you haven't tried it before. It's not like just playing chords and singing. It's, you know, you're playing like riffs or whatever you want to call them, and Mark Knopfler's really good at doing it. He's holding everything down in the song. He wrote the song on his own, and his brother had just left the band, I think, just before this, and you know, there was no, I guess, power dynamic in that sense anymore. Even though Mark Knopfler is the principal songwriter, obviously with two brothers in a band, it's always like can be a bit tense and stuff like that. But he makes this song, and it's out. It comes out in the album Making Movies. It didn't do like, it did well. I think it got to like number 8 in the UK, number 5 in Ireland, just for if anybody's interested in that. But when I don't know, the opening part of the song, it is always just like, there's Dire Straits songs that are kind of bigger or rockier, you know, Walk of Life, or you know, Money for Nothing. These kind of songs are kind of more punchy and more radio friendly, I suppose is the phrase I'm kind of looking for. But when I hear Romeo and Juliet, I know I'm kind of in for a journey, whether it's lyrically, storytelling wise, and there's maybe a little more depth, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, kind of. But I've always pictured these two people, or these three people, or whatever way you want to see it, Romeo and Juliet, and then the person on who this partner, this Juliet, has gone off with. And I've always been able to picture these three people. And when we talk about storytelling songwriters, thinking of like Dylan and Eddie Vedder's another one who tells stories, Neil Young. I think this story is right up there, like with something that's really deep. Not in the first person, you know, like in the third person, about these characters who are loosely based around the characters who've been written before. It's a tricky kind of thing a tricky thing to do in how he writes the songs, or writes the song, but I think he pulls it off, and like, you know, it was always going to be in the top 100. I didn't know where it was going to be, but it was always going to be in there, because like, it's one of those songs, every time I hear it, it just makes me sit up and really appreciate what Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler are doing. So yeah, Romeo and Juliet, Dire Straits. Thanks. Bye.